Hello friends, so I'm coming at you this fine day with this beautiful stack of books that you can't really see it and my greasy ass hair to talk to you about all the things that I read in the month of March, which has just passed us by so quickly. Alas, I won't say too much because there's quite a few books, so let us get into them. I shall, as I usually do, start off with the books that I don't have physical copies of at this specific moment in time for one reason or another. I read The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro. That's book 2 in the Sherlock Holmes series, which I adore. It's pretty much a young adult mystery, crimey type thing that follows the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, and it's Charlotte Holmes and Jamie Watson, and they're adorable. It's one of those beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful Slytherin Hufflepuff duos, which I love. I adore that. You decide who is who. But this one is more in Europe, traveling and whatnot, than the first one, which was set pretty much just in the boarding school that the two of them met. And it's wonderful. It's set in Berlin predominantly and London, which I just really love. Never been to Berlin, but now I feel like I could and I would. So that was great. And this is less of a proper mystery than it is just an excuse for more in-depth character study and developing the relationship that has been established between our two protagonists. And it is so beautifully angsty and I adore it. And it's still wild and funny and everything else I would want it to be. I can definitely see why some people wouldn't necessarily like this as much, since it does take that very character-driven route. But I personally adored it, and this is slightly becoming one of my favorite series. So if it sounds like something you would like, definitely would recommend. I also read Sheets by Brenna Tumblr, and this is a graphic novel. It looks real cute, right? So it's all pastel-y and nice, so I thought it would be soft about a random ghost hunting a laundromat, which sounds really cool, and it is that. But oh my god, it's actually told between two different perspectives. So it's our ghosty that haunts the laundromat, and before getting to the laundromat, he's still in Ghost World. And the artwork of that part is all black and white and angsty and cute. And then the pastel-y part follows the girl that's in charge of the laundromat because her mother used to own it and the mother is dead and she needs to hustle and her dad is depressed and locked in his room. It is so deep. I did not expect it to be that. So it does have the fun, ghosty, spooky side, has the beautiful artwork, but it's also really an interesting exploration of grief and whatnot. I would have liked it more if the author had taken more time to properly develop the dynamics between the two characters, but overall, it was such a good read and I would recommend it. I also read In an Absentee Room by Shannon Maguire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series, and it is a prequel to the first one, Every Heart a Doorway. Follows one of the characters from that. Her name is Lundy, and it's kind of her origin story back in the 50s, 60s, somethings, when she was a child, and she ended up going to a world that's kind of like a goblin market, and adventures and shenanigans ensured. And it might be one of my favorites, if not my favorite book in the series. The series is pretty much about these kids that went to fantastical worlds and have returned to our world. So it's a lot. They're very short novella type things, but there's so much to unpack in each of them. And this one particularly just spoke to me. And again, this is one of my favorite series. I'm not really one to really keep up with series. I'm terrible at that, but I read this as soon as it came out, and I do try to keep up with this series because it's very good. So I'd highly recommend this one as well. And then I feel like we should just get into this because it's a theme. I told myself I would try to read as many of the Women's Prize for Fiction nominees as I possibly could. Turns out, long lists are real freaking long. I read Normal People by Sally Rooney ages before, so I had one down. And I own another one and had another one, a haul from the library, so it's just a whole thing. But I read My Sister, the Serial Killer, and this is a short, crimey novel type thing about a lady whose sister turns out to somehow keep murdering her boyfriends. And it's about the sister that's not the killer trying to process this and, you know, go into the whole, are my morals worth more than my love for my sister, and how do I navigate this? And it all starts getting even deeper when the serial killer sister starts seeing the guy that the non-serial killer sister is interested in, and so she's kind of testing her loyalty. And it wasn't really for me, sadly. It's very short, and I don't really like crimey things, to be quite honest. So it was interesting. I appreciated it. I could see why people would like it, which is why I since passed it on to A Better Home, because I thought one of my friends might really enjoy it. But it just wasn't for me. I really like a character-driven story, as I've previously mentioned, and I couldn't really connect with either of the characters or the situation or anything really, so that didn't work for me. But I also really appreciate that it's a diverse story in this genre that you don't really see as often, especially by a marginalized author. So I appreciate it. It just was not for me, and that's fine. It's fine. I also finally read Cersei by Madeline Miller. I listened to this on audio because my library had the audiobook, and that was phenomenal. It follows the witch Cersei of Aiaia from, you know, all the Greek myths that it isn't really that many about her, but still, Cersei, and it's kind of her origin story and the myths that she is part of, reimagined with her at the center. And it's so beautiful. I thought the audiobook as a way of experiencing the story was great because the narrator is just so wonderful, and she did such a good job making the story come to life. So I really, really, really like that. And I've always been a very, you know, Greek myth person, but yeah, now that you think about it, they're all very male-centric, and I think Cersei as a figure is just super intriguing and super interesting. And because the original source material doesn't really give you all that much to work with when it comes to her, I think Madeline Miller had the creative freedom to take the character wherever she wanted, and she did such a good job. And just, oh, it's so wonderful. And the way she builds and develops this character, and she takes her from a young, kind of clueless girl to this badass witch. It's just phenomenal, and kind of like what all of us should aspire to. She's just too talented, and the prose has such a beautiful flow to it, and it's all very aspirational because it's so good. I did talk to a lot of people before because it was one of our recommended reads back when it first came out, and I know one of my coworkers loved it, and so she chose it. But another one that read it really did not like the pacing, which I heard from a bunch of people that is a problem, but for me it really worked because I think you have to make very specific choices when it comes to pacing when you're dealing with this immortal character. So I thought that Madeline Miller did a really great job, especially because she's on that godforsaken island for so long, and you need to decide how you explain, how you time things, so it all worked for me. I don't know if it would for everyone, but it worked for me. It did it for me. I love it. I will potentially one day read the other one, Song of Achilles, because Madeline Miller just stole my breath away with this. And then on a very similar note, since this is the last Women's Prize nominee that I read, and also a reimagining of Greek myth, I read Sunless of the Girls by Pat Barker, and this is pretty much a retelling of what happens with some of the women of Troy once the Greeks conquer their specific cities and they're taken as slaves and whatnot. And I think the title is a little bit misleading because you follow one specific woman and then it's mostly Achilles' story, and you get glimpses of the other women, but you don't really get their stories. So really appreciated this, but misleading, yeah. And I thought it was super well written. Again, very interesting character story. I really appreciate the idea of reimagining these stories with women at their center, and it's very self-aware, and it's really, really thought out, and it's very visceral because you have such a hard-hitting theme to develop, and I thought Pat Barker did it wonderfully and exquisitely, and this was very hard to read because there's a lot of rape, there's, you know, a lot of darkness, because they're slaves, it's terrible, but it was so enthralling, so I really, really, I don't want to say I enjoyed it, because again, it was a lot, but I appreciated it, and it was for me, I guess. And then on to the rest of my physical books. I read In Paris With You by Clémentine Beauvais. This is translated from French, and it's a novel in verse. My friend Helen passed this on to me one time. She just popped into the shop. She does that a lot. Love Helen, a true legend. But yeah, she thought I might enjoy this, and I think he did for the most part. I thought having the verse was an interesting stylistic choice, but it really took advantage of the form and did very interesting things that added to the story instead of just being like, oh, I'm gonna write a novel in verse. I'm not sure, you know, how loyal of a translation this is, and I would enjoy to read the original French version. But yes, anyway, so this follows the story of a guy and a girl that used to kind of have a thing back when they were teenagers, and now they just kind of bump into each other on the subway as adults, and there's a spark, and so it's about what happened in the past and whether or not they would like to reignite that spark as adults. And it's really interesting. It's pretty dark. It was a fun time, and it was very addicting, and I do think it's one of the most original writing styles I've encountered in the past. I kind of wish it did more with having Paris as the setup, but I suppose if you live in a place, you're not going to be like, oh, let me romanticize the hell out of it. So I understand, I respect that. But yes, it was really interesting character study. It was obviously very character driven. It was well written, and I really enjoyed seeing the whole dynamic of the characters. And I think it's one of the things that I've read that do the best job exploring the idea of romanticizing people in your head and contrasting people that really exist with your idea of them, so it's very smart. I also read everyone's newfound favorite, JayZ Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is amazing. So I met Taylor Jenkins Reid, fun fact, and this is an oral history of a fictional 80s, 70s rock band. And it's wonderful. It follows JayZ Jones, who used to be a groupie, and then the Six, who are like a band that she ends up joining once she's on her career path. It's giving me all the Fleetwood Mac feels that I need, and I need all the Fleetwood Mac feels because I love Fleetwood Mac. So it's a really dramatic, what's it called? Musical reality show type drama that you need in your life. It's very immersive, and it makes you want to Google these people and these performances, and it makes you believe everything you're reading is real, even though you know it's not, but you want to Google the songs, and it's very meta, it's very beautiful, and super fun. I love the characters, I love the world, I love the stylistic choice of having the book be a transcribed interview type thing. I just think it's super unique, and it's super interesting, and it really, really works with this particular story. And it's also very relative because everyone remembers it differently, and it's super, super fun. It's not as hard-hitting, I would say, as Evelyn Hugo, but it's definitely one of my favorite reads of this year so far, and I would highly recommend it. Then for one of my courses, I read The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien, and this is a play based on her novel. Should have read the novel, because this is not doing it for me. It follows two country girls from the countryside of Ireland in the 50s, 60s, back to that time, you know? and their move into the city life and stuff. Didn't like it. It didn't connect. I think it's because I chose to read the play, but it's shorter, you know, it's shorter. I just wanted to get in and out. But yeah, I didn't really click with the writing style of the play format, so I might have to give the novel a shot. I feel like I could enjoy this because I do love a coming of age story, but at the same time, I just don't care. I also read The Bane Chronicles, finally, by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, and Maureen Johnson. This is a collection of short story novella type things about Magnus Bane, who's everyone's favorite warlock from the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and it's just a collection of stories about Magnus's life at different points in time and space. It's really fun. Again, I really enjoy a good immortal story because you can do so much and you can play so much, and this is really good. I thought I could see Magnus in a different light, and he's relatable but also aspirational, and just, this is very close to my heart. Everyone told me this was terrible, and there are some stories, obviously they're not as good as others, but overall this was such a beautiful, solid read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I would recommend this if you're a Shadowhunter Chronicles fan, to be quite honest. There are some really deep stories, there are some really fun stories. My favorite is probably The Midnight Air, but that's just because it's centered around the time of The Last Hours, which is Cassie's next Shadowhunter series. And then again on audio, because I love The Priory of the Orange Tree, I thought I would reread Samantha Shannon's first book, The Bone Season, so I can finally continue on with the series. So I read this so long ago, and also Matt Samantha, as you can see, signed to me, beautiful, gorgeous. This follows Paige, who is a clairvoyant in futuristic but also kind of historical alternate London. It's strange. It's a wild. There's no possible way to properly describe this without either giving away the plot or just, you know, making no sense. So I'm gonna say nothing. But this was a reread after loads of years of not having read this. So it was very interesting to go back and revisit the story. And I thought not only did it hold up, which I was afraid it wouldn't because it's been years and I'm a whole different person, but I saw so many new dimensions to this book, and I think I really appreciate it on such a deeper level now than I did before. And the audiobook is very good, so I recommend that as well. Yeah, and that's kind of everything that I've read in the month of March, and let me know if you've read any of these books. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you